One day, Lucius discovers that his friend's wife is a witch.
He and his girlfriend watch through a keyhole as she secretly transforms into a bird. Fascinated by the idea, Lucius asks his girlfriend to perform the same spell on him, but without training in magic, she accidentally turns Lucius into a donkey. Before the spell can be undone, Lucius the donkey is stolen by thieves.
After a series of crazy adventures, Lucius the donkey arrives at a calm sea at full moon. Instinctively, he cries out to the goddess who controls all things. "Rid me of this foul four-footed form," he cries. "Make me the Lucius I once was."
He closes his eyes to sleep, and then suddenly he sees something rising out of the ocean. A beautiful woman, her dark curling hair dripping with seawater. The symbol of the moon is fixed to her forehead. She is clothed in a multicolored robe and smells of Arabian perfume. The contrast with Lucius the donkey could not be greater.
In a heavenly voice, she tells Lucius she is the mother of all nature and queen of the dead, but only the Egyptians know her true name.
She will cure Lucius on one condition: he must dedicate the rest of his life to her. He agrees, returns to human form, and the story ends with a series of initiations into the mysteries of Isis.
Lucius had just joined arguably the most successful mystery cult in the ancient Roman Empire.
The mystery cults were a group of religious movements which flourished in the late Roman world. To join one, you needed to go through a secret initiation ceremony. This video is the first in a series on the ancient mystery cults.
The secrecy around these movements was so serious, even today we don't really know what happened in the cult of Isis. What we do know is they were extraordinarily successful. Long after other mystery cults had been banned and the Roman Empire had become Christian, people were still celebrating festivals of Isis in the capital of the empire into the 400s. In this video, I want to take a look with you behind the curtain of the cults of Isis. What made this mystery cult so popular, and why did it disappear?
So from mysterious statues to dangerous coffins, let's get started.
In a temple in Egypt is a statue. It shows a woman carved in stone and covered in a veil. Below the statue are these words: "I am all that has been, and is, and shall be." This statue has never been found.
The only reason we know it exists is because two Greek writers have described it for us. The statue is a combination of the goddesses Neith and Isis, but to keep things simple, they just call her Isis. There is a second inscription. It says, "No one has lifted my veil." It's probably a play on words. Isis is invoked by lovers who want to stay faithful to each other before marriage. To philosophers, it means something else. No one has understood Isis's mystical knowledge.
But now we have a problem. Did the ancient Greeks actually understand what they were reading? It's possible the second line is a translation error. It should actually read, "There is nobody except me."
These probably aren't the kinds of words you expect to hear from an Egyptian goddess. Yet it was exactly claims like this which made Isis so tantalizingly popular in the ancient world. This was the goddess who wanted it all and claimed she had it all as well.
Now, wait a minute, you're asking. There is nobody except me? Isn't that monotheism? Isn't that what Yahweh, the God of Israel, says?
Well, not exactly. The two ideas are actually quite different. In the Old Testament, God claims he is the one true God. Isis, on the other hand, wants to tell us she is all of the gods, true and untrue, and more than that, she is all people and places throughout history. This kind of belief we call cosmotheism. God is in the universe.
It wasn't just Egyptians who liked this idea. Greek philosophers influenced by Plato or Roman Stoics found this fit really nicely with their worldview. And so Isis could say these extraordinary things, and instead of offending people, her words were considered profound. It also sounded really cool, and for a mystery cult, sounding cool was really important.
It also helped if the priests were impressive. For the Greeks and Romans, the devotees of Isis were regarded in the same way someone might look at a Buddhist monk on the streets of New York. They were exotic, different, and therefore represented something very sacred. What were these missionaries of Isis like? Heliodorus writes a story about an Egyptian priest of Isis, Osiris, who leaves his country after a dream from the goddess. Eventually he arrives in Delphi in Greece, where the oracle tells him to stay as long as he likes. In fact, he's offered a job as a priest at the temple of Apollo. The Greeks of Delphi are in awe of Osiris and his holy knowledge. One day he finds a group arguing about the flooding of the Nile. Some say it's caused by melting snow, others that it's the result of powerful winds blowing back the water. Osiris, who has read the sacred books only reserved for priests of Isis, explains the Nile's flooding is caused by seasonal rain, storms from the far south.
It's not just abstract knowledge where the travelling priests came out on top.
When the beautiful Chariclea offers a sacred torch to the hero Theagenes at a public festival, only Osiris the priest realizes they have fallen in love at first sight. They stood a while as if astonished, she slowly offering and he slowly receiving the torch. Then softly, smiling with their eyes rather than the lips, they both blushed as if ashamed of what they had done. In short, 1,000 shades of feeling wandered in a few moments over their faces.
No one else notices this, however. They're too focused on the festival. When Chariclea falls into a lover's depression, only Osiris knows what's going on. And when he's able to cheer her up by playing matchmaker, the Greeks consider him a great magician being guided by Isis.
With a respectful, sometimes gullible audience, priests of Isis found the Greek cities fertile grounds for their cult. The foreignness of it was important. People were hungry for some Egyptian knowledge, but the cult also adapted.
In local towns, followers of Isis connected their goddess to deities who were already respected. Statues to Isis Ceres appeared in some cities, Isis Venus in others. There was even Isis Juno.
At the same time, missionaries of Isis learned from the Greek mystery religions. These ancient rites involved secret initiation ceremonies. They were open to any genuine seekers. The cult of Isis copied this, adapting the ceremony for the initiation of priests, and turning it into a dramatic religious experience, open to any serious members of the public.
Lucius, the former donkey, goes to a priest of Isis and tells him he wants to be initiated into the mystery cult, but the priest tells him he can't do that right away. Instead, he has to pray and fast for several days and wait for a message from the goddess. Eventually, Lucius has a dream. Isis appears to him and says, "It's time for you to be initiated." When he tells this to the priest immediately begins the initiation process.
In the temple, the priest opens an enormous book full of strange symbols and reads from it. Lucius is impressed.
Some of its letters were shaped like creatures, representing profound concepts. In others, the tops and tails of letters were knotted, coiled, interwoven like vines to hide their meaning from ignorant eyes.
Next, Lucius is bathed and purified with water. Then, standing before a statue of the goddess, he agrees to avoid eating food for 10 days. Only after 10 days of fasting is Lucius allowed to return to the temple. It is late evening. He is clothed in white linen and taken into the inner chambers of the temple, where he will spend the night. What happened next, Lucius explains, he cannot tell us.
"I'd tell you if it were allowed. Oh, all right, I shall speak, but I shall speak only what can be revealed, things which you may not understand. So listen, I reached the very gates of death. I passed through all the elements and returned. I have seen the sun at midnight, shining brightly. I have entered the presence of the gods below and the presence of the gods above."
In the morning, Lucius is dressed in a multicolored robe, adorned with palm branches, given a lighted torch, and unveiled to the waiting crowd on the temple steps, who greet his appearance with a cheer. The rest of his stay in the temple, Lucius spends staring lovingly at the goddess's statue.
What actually happened in the inner chambers is not clear. It probably involved some kind of ritual with statues of the gods being lit up by torches or unveiled before the initiates. But that wasn't so important to Lucius. What mattered most to him was the message he drew from it. Isis had the power over all things, of the heavens above and the earth below.
In fact, Isis seems to have offered some kind of life after death to her followers. This was an unusual promise for a deity to make in the ancient world. The exact nature of this promise was not clear and seems to have been kept purposefully ambiguous.
The gates of the underworld and the guardianship of life are both in her hands, and through the rites of initiation, you die and are saved through her grace.
It's possible the cult borrowed from the Greek tradition of Orphism, the idea that through initiation your soul can attain a kind of eternal life. But there is also an Egyptian element here, the story of Isis and Osiris, and their godchild, Horus.
It's no coincidence our best source for the myth of Isis comes from a Greek writing around 100 AD. Plutarch warns his readers not to take the story too literally. These are rather signs which point to greater mystical truths. This makes him a very bad source for ancient Egyptian religion, but it makes him a great source for the cult of Isis.
Isis and Osiris were brother and sister. While they were still twins in their mother's womb, they fell in love and conceived their child, Horus. Osiris was a great king. This made his brother Typhon jealous. One day, Typhon invited Osiris to a feast. Now, normally Isis, his wife, protected him from Typhon's tricks, but this time she didn't go. There were going to be 72 other people there. Typhon surely couldn't get away with anything at such a public gathering. At the end of the feast, Typhon unveiled a beautiful coffin. He promised to give it to the first guest who fit into it perfectly. Gradually each guest got into the coffin and tried it, but none fit. At last, Osiris got inside. It fit perfectly, and before he could react, Typhon and his guests slammed the lid shut and nailed the coffin closed. Then they cast it into the Nile and watched it sail into the sea.
When Isis discovers this, she is distraught. She tears her clothes and cries out in a great voice. Anyone she looks at immediately passes away. She sets out on a journey in a boat, searching for Osiris, and after many years she eventually discovers his coffin. It's lodged inside a tree in a city in Lebanon. She opens up the tree, takes the coffin with her back to Egypt, and with trepidation she begins to open it. Inside is her husband, but he is no more.
Before she could bury him, she was ambushed by Typhon and his friends. They tore the body to pieces and scattered it across Egypt. But everywhere a part of Osiris landed, a temple was built in his name. Although his body was dead, Osiris was very much alive. He had become king of the afterlife, and he spoke to his son Horus, telling him to get revenge on Typhon. Horus now focuses on training for battle, obsessed with defeating his father's enemy. At last Osiris tests his son by asking him what animal will be most useful in the war.
A horse, replies Horus. Osiris is surprised. Why not a lion, he asks. A lion is useful for a man in need of help, but a horse allows the victor to cut off the flight of the enemy and to annihilate him. Osiris smiles.
Horus confronted Typhon and defeated him in a mighty battle, but now Isis, his mother, decided to hold him back. She won't let him destroy Typhon totally. She holds sway over the balance of the universe. Horus becomes the new king, and in a sense Osiris, his father, is reborn through him. All three ascend through their experience and become powerful gods.
For Plutarch, Isis's story pointed to profound truths about the world around us. It was like the way a rainbow points us towards the sun. The myth was about the conflict between destructive and positive creative forces in the universe. It was about the interconnectedness of all things. She herself was nature and the world.
We know the Greeks misunderstood many aspects of ancient Egyptian religion. Horus the godchild, for example, was often portrayed sucking his finger, a classic Egyptian depiction of a child. The Greeks misunderstood this as a gesture for silence, a shh, and they turned Horus into the god of secrets and mysteries.
But it was through these reinterpretations they helped to create the mystery cult of Isis. It was a religious product created in Egypt, refined in Greece, and marketed for Roman consumption. And it was a product.
Temples don't get built or run for free. At every initiation, Lucius has to pay some money to the priests. In fact, the further he gets up the hierarchy, the more money he has to fork out for the revelation of new wonders. The mystery cults were businesses, as well as religious movements.
In Rome, the cult of Isis inserted itself into the economic lifeblood of the city. Each year, grain shipments from Egypt would arrive in Rome to feed the populace. Of course, it was Isis, the Egyptian nature goddess, who was held responsible for this.
By 100 AD, the Novigium Isidis had become a major spring festival. Priests and the populace would march from the temple carrying the effigy of a boat and release it into the sea or a nearby river. This was done so Isis would protect the shipments of grain. Lucius describes one such procession.
First came women in white, covered in spring flowers and scattering blossoms and perfumed water on the path. Then came the musicians and choirs. After this were a great mass of men and women, all those initiated into the sacred mysteries of Isis. The men had shaved heads and the women were veiled. Finally came the priests, carrying the symbols of the goddess, a glittering lamp shaped like a golden boat, and palm branches covered in gold. After them walked the gods. The statue of Isis was carried by a priest. It was made of gold, veiled in cloth, and covered in hieroglyphics. For at least one day a year, the cult of Isis took over the city of Rome.
A goddess with this kind of festival deserved a fitting temple. In Rome, Isis's temple was adorned with Egyptian and Greek art. Pink obelisks stood outside, while a magnificent statue of the goddess, holding a sistrum rattle and clothed with an Isis knot, was in the chamber. A statue of the personification of the river Nile stood nearby. Isis shared her temple with Serapis, the Greco-Roman version of her husband, Osiris.
There were plenty of temples to choose from in Rome, but Isis's was special. Only she could control fate and fortune, which even the gods, even Jupiter himself, were subject to.
Lucius praises Isis for this reason. He has been tormented by blind fortune, buffeted this way and that, by a seemingly meaningless series of events. Isis, however, had conquered fortune herself. She quelled the sea storms and the storms of fate.
It's no coincidence that ancient adventure stories often end with everyone being reunited at the temple of Isis.
In the tale of Anthea and Harbrochames, the two lovers are captured by pirates before being separated and sold as slaves. Each goes on a fantastical adventure until eventually, by chance, they meet each other and their friends in the temple of Isis in Rhodes. The benevolent goddess brings the young lovers back together, and the story ends happily.
On the other hand, trying to fight the decrees of the goddess was completely pointless. When Calorisis, the high priest of Isis, is sent a dream from Isis in which the goddess tells him that he's going to lose his position as high priest because he will fall in love with a woman who's about to arrive in his city, he simply accepts it as fact. When, a few days later, he meets this beautiful woman for the first time, he leaves his job and the city and goes on a travelling adventure. He believed it was simply easier to obey the goddess than to stay and fight fate itself.
But as the Roman Empire Christianized in the 300s, the fate of Isis herself came into question. The festival of the Boat of Isis continued in Rome to 417 AD. The temple of Isis and Serapis was damaged by fire around the same time. In Egypt, the cult lasted to the 500s.
Isis's cult was one of the last great mystery religions to be wiped out by the Christian Roman Empire, but the legacy of the goddess who claimed to be all things was not completely lost.
9 pages of untitled papyrus were found in the Nag Hammadi Library, a collection of Gnostic writings buried in Egypt in the 300s. They contained one of the most extraordinarily beautiful and powerful pieces of ancient poetry. An anonymous speaker commands us to observe her and the world.
I am the silence never found. I am the infinitely remembered aim. I am the voice with countless sounds. I am the speaking of my name. I am without shame. I am ashamed. I am safe and I am fearful. I am war and I am peaceful. I am the knowledge of barbarians. I am the wisdom of the Greeks. My image is great in Egypt. I am hated in every place. I am being. I am nothing. Listen then, all of you, and spirits who have risen from the dead, for I alone exist, and no one judges me. But you will find me in that place, and you will live, and you will not die again.
We never learn who the speaker is, and historians have traditionally assumed she represents the female personification of wisdom, Sophia, or the Gnostic female aeon, Barbelo.
But this speech also fits perfectly into the mouth of Isis and her claims of cosmotheism. It would go very nicely under the statue we talked about earlier. For some Christians at least, there may have been a way to marry these claims of the goddess and their monotheistic beliefs. In my fantasy novel, a character reads a version of this poem at the climax of the story.
There was a second way the cult of Isis endured in the Christian Empire. As interest in Mary, the mother of Jesus, increased in the 400s, artists began looking for iconic images they could use to represent her. The most famous representation of a mother feeding her baby came from Egypt, the motif of Isis and her son Horus. It seems Christian artists drew on this iconography when developing the image of Mary with the baby Jesus.
Meanwhile, some folk historians argue that they can trace the tradition of the carnival back to the festival of the Boat of Isis, where the boat in the procession would eventually become the carnival float. Some might argue that, in a small way, Isis's claim that she was all that will be kind of came true. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, why not give it a like and subscribe? Next time we'll be looking at another mystery cult. This one was so chaotic and controversial, it was actually banned, but that didn't do much good. See you next time.